Okay, everyone. Thanks for showing up tonight, remembering that we're going to have a meeting. And so fantastic to have you. We got a pretty good lineup of information. Before I turn it over to Andy, we'll see the agenda. You'll see the various things that we have to cover off. So next slide there. There we are. So we'll have Aaron Durant from Durant Barristers with us, and working through some of the things that might be helpful in your club program, especially on the side of policy and procedure. We're going to have a little status update, probably taking off a little bit from what Andy will say, a little pair update. Darda's not with us tonight. It's her son's birthday, so pretty important to spend those birthdays. So she's doing that. We'll have a small report from the EDI committee. Hopefully Leela will be along. If not, I'll jump in. Program update by Stu McLean. Conference awards, the Hall of Fame, all that stuff that's going to take place in September. Christy will be able to bring that on. And then obviously at any point in time when there's a pertinent question on some of the subjects, by all means. But if you want to try and hold off, or you can put them in chat and we'll figure it out from there. We'll just, the idea is to give you information, but hopefully create some dialogue. So anyways, I'll turn it over to Andy.
Well, thank you very much, Dean, and let me take an opportunity to thank all of you for being on the call tonight. It's much appreciated. This is really an opportunity to keep up to date on many of the issues and initiatives that are affecting swimming in Ontario, something we try to do on a quarterly basis. And in the past, we found it very useful, and I suspect tonight will be as well. I also want to take the opportunity while we have everybody here to thank all of the volunteers, the coaches, and the staff who are on this call. Without your dedication and hard work, we would not be able to deliver swimming programs and competitions across the province. So to each of you who are here this evening, I want to say a very heartfelt thank you. More specifically, I want to express my appreciation to all of those who have worked so hard to regularize things after the data breach. It's been a massive undertaking. I know our staff, the staff at Swimming Canada, and the staff at the individual clubs have worked very, very hard to bring things back to normal. And I want you all to know how much that's appreciated and how much we counted on the support right across the system. I also want to recognize those clubs who have participated in the pilot mentorship program that was launched this spring. I think the meetings that we've had to date have been very informative and very successful. And Dean is going to be speaking a little bit more to this later in the meeting. I also wanted to advise from a board's perspective that we recently approved our 2023-24 budget. It's our intention to invest the remainder of the two fiscal budget surpluses that occurred during COVID in 2021-22 and in 2022-23 into a number of key areas this year. That includes regional and provincial programming for both our Paralympic and Olympic streams, new investments into our master's programming, into the development of officials, into coaches development, club development and support for regional initiatives. As will be mentioned with the update from Leela and Dean in respect to EDI, we will also be providing additional support in that area. So we have a very wide-ranging and interesting agenda tonight. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Dean.
Thanks, Andy, and I'll turn it over to Darren. How you like that? It's a good relay system going on here. Fantastic.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce our Chief External Counsel, Aaron Durant, who's our resident expert in safe sport, complaint and discipline and appeal policy and procedure. And she's here to talk to us about a very important topic, very timely topic. What do clubs do and what is the procedure to follow if you get a safe sport or swimmer safety or bullying, harassment, etc. complaint?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. A little bit about me. So I'm Swim Ontario's external legal counsel, but other than doing legal work, I'm also a fan of sport and a former competitive athlete and a NCCP certified coach. I do work with a lot of different sports, both at the provincial and the national level. And as you may already be aware, if you happen to watch TSN or CBC or look at any type of news media, sport safety and athlete safety is becoming a very important topic, one that's getting a lot of media attention. And I certainly have noticed that since the COVID-19 pandemic, that there has been more and more athletes pushing for change in sport and for athletes to have a voice in sport. And a lot of the ways that they are doing so is by taking advantage of discipline and reporting mechanisms in sport. As a former athlete who had very positive experiences throughout my sports career, I think some of these changes are good. I think it's going to cause a lot of pushback and some difficulties amongst various clubs, provincial associations, national associations. Hockey Canada comes to mind as someone who's seen a lot of complaints and not necessarily have dealt with them well historically. So there's a real appetite for change within the Canadian sports system at all levels. And the reason I'm very excited to have an opportunity to speak with all of you today is it's my very firm belief that it is the volunteers on the ground at the club level in sport and in all sports who have the biggest possible impact on the athlete experience, on the volunteer experience, and on being able to really do more than your fair share in terms of keeping athletes safe. It is you guys and girls who see the athletes day in and day out and have the ability to earn their trust. And I think by putting a bigger emphasis on safety in sport at that grassroots level can help all of us make sport a positive place moving forward and a better place moving forward. So if we move on to the next slide. There we go. So I'm only going to cover 2 topics today. I'm promised that we'll have much more time to speak about these issues and really dive into them at the conference, which I saw was later on the agenda in terms of planning for the conference. But today we're going to talk about first, creating an environment where athletes and parents feel safe reporting concerns within your club. And number 2, what do you do practically if you get a complaint in terms of having it administered and making sure you're dealing with it in a fair and transparent manner. Next slide. So as I said in my introduction, most allegations of maltreatment in sport come at the club level. And when I use the word maltreatment, I'm using the definition that can be found in a document called the discipline and complaint process usually has the term maltreatment. And also there's national documents that have been created that outline sort of on a national basis what some of these words and some of these meanings mean. So what we're talking about basically is maltreatment of either athletes, volunteers in your organization, other coaches, and it has a fairly broad definition. So we're talking about physical abuse, emotional abuse, discrimination, harassment, bullying, and hazing are the most common examples of the things that we see. So we could be talking about athlete on athlete misconduct. We can be talking about coach on athlete misconduct, volunteer on volunteer, and so on. And what we've found through researching misconduct in sport and maltreatment in sport is that the most serious cases arise from clubs or environments where there is an environment or a perception of fear, where people are not comfortable if they see something to say something about it. And that can happen from a number of different reasons. Sometimes you may have a club or a team that has a very strong coach with a strong personality that's not good at listening to people, and people are afraid to speak because of this individual. Other times people feel that too many of the people on the board or the very active volunteers are too close together, that they will protect each other, that no one will stick their neck out in order to bring a concerning situation forward. So, when we're learning a little bit about sports governance and, who should be involved in your organization, one of the things that we learn and we teach people is you don't want everybody around the table to be the same, to be from the same background, to be of the same race, to be of the same gender. You should be aiming to build clubs that are a fairly diverse group, and you're looking for people, I think, that aren't afraid to see something and say something about it if it's going to be harmful to either an athlete or a volunteer or somebody else in your organization. And I had a really interesting experience a couple years ago. So I was brought in to do an investigation after a complaint was made. And this was at the national level. It was a team that was training to go to a world championships. And the complaint was made by one athlete against another athlete. And I was quite nervous going in to do the investigation because they were only about a month and a half away from a world level tournament. And I felt that my involvement would be disruptive. And it was fascinating to meet with the athletes involved and with the staff involved, because what the athletes told me was that 2 or 3 years before that, they were all begging for some sort of independent system to be in existence, so that if there were concerns, there'd be somebody to talk to that they could trust, and a process to use to deal with concerns. So what I kept hearing again and again and again from the veteran players was, yes, nobody wants to talk to a lawyer when you're in the middle of their training season, but they were so thankful that the system had been developed, and they now felt like no matter what side of the dispute they were on, that they had an opportunity to talk to somebody about it and feel like they were listened to. So I personally no longer see people making a complaint as a bad thing. For me, people that are using systems that have been put into place mean that the systems are working, and that there's opportunity to either, one, weed out the bad actors in sport, and there are some, or two, if you're the person that's being complained about, you now have an opportunity in a formal setting to clear your name and to resolve the issue. So I think a lot of us, especially people who aren't lawyers, when you get a complaint, you feel like your organization's being attacked. You feel like perhaps your own personal integrity is being attacked. But I think if you come into it looking like, okay, that these systems are here for a reason, they're here to protect, first and foremost, the athletes, to make sure they're safe, but also they're there to make sure that if someone is saying things and alleging something against you, that there's a way to deal with it and to have your name cleared. So I think having that type of mindset and remembering the purpose of these complaint mechanisms will help all of us in understanding why they're there, and hopefully not allow us to feel threatened or attacked if someone's making a complaint about the club, but seeing it as an opportunity to solve a problem in a healthy way, and giving people an organized way in which they can deal with their problems. So creating a safe environment, it's hard to talk globally about this without me not having met each and every one of your clubs, the individuals involved, the size, but I like to break things down into sort of the usual journalistic questions. So who, what, where, when, and how. So I think the biggest thing that you and your clubs could do to improve safety for athletes and volunteers is to spend some time early in the season, as things are ramping up and you're signing on new members, to have a really good talk about your policies for reporting misconduct, reviewing your code of conduct, and making it really clear about what people should do in your club if they have a question, if they have a concern, if they have something very serious to report. So the first thing is who. So to who do they report to? It's best to have one designated person, possibly a committee of 2 people if you feel your club is so large and you don't have they don't have enough time to do this, but you need to have a very direct person to go to. What doesn't work typically is saying, come to any member of the board or go to any coach. The reason for that, and I just finished an investigation where that was sort of the policy, is that not every coach and not every board member, not every volunteer is going to be good at this, is going to study and really know the policies to apply, to really be good at listening to people, at documenting complaints. So in a perfect world, you would identify somebody within your organization or somebody even at a neighboring organization who you would trust to be your complaints intake person, who would be the one that the concerns get addressed to. And that way, that one person can have that as their main job and really focus in on the policies, the procedures, and become known and being seen as a safe person to your athletes and your volunteers. Another thing that you're going to want to cover at these types of meetings is what. So what type of conduct should be reported and to whom? And I tend to divide these into sort of 2 different buckets of complaints. So if somebody has a question or complaint about the size of the membership fee, about the color of your team sweaters, about wanting to practice at a different time, that stuff isn't maltreatment. That's sort of your day-to-day issues that people have at the club, and likely your current organization already has your frontline people that deal with those types of issues. It may be an administrator, it may be the coaches, whatever. So those aren't the things I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about in terms of what should be reported to your designated person is allegations of racism, of sexual abuse, of physical abuse, emotional abuse, anything that could result in potential, suspension, the result of the potential removal of a coach from a position, anything that could result in discipline, rather than a policy change in terms of a fee, should go to your complaints officer, whoever you designate. And you should teach both the parents and the athletes about this. And it's up to you whether you want to do it in a joint session or have parents talked with and athletes separately with each individual team. But a lot of the times it's the athletes who may report directly themselves. Some athletes may not feel comfortable for one reason or another initially telling their parent. Now, eventually, as the process unfolds, the parent will have to get involved. But I think it's important to educate both the parents and the athletes, and of course, your coaches and volunteers on what type of misconduct to report, where. So where on your website and where on the Swim Ontario website can information about this be found? So I'll answer for the Swim Ontario example. So if you were to just Google Safe Sport Swim Ontario, the first thing you would find is the landing page. There's also a sub-page called Resources for Clubs that have an example dispute resolution complaints policy there that everyone's being highly encouraged to adopt at the club level. You'll also find the provincial complaint documents and the code of conduct in that location. So if there was ever a need to report beyond the club level directly to Swim Ontario about something, all the processes can be found online there. And Darren is the staff person assigned to answer questions about any of those documents. So at your club level, you should have your club code of conduct. You should have your discipline and complaints process, the name and contact information for the person to whom complaints should be made, somewhere very easy to find. If you were to go to most national sports organizations and most provincial sports organizations' websites, you will see an icon pretty close to the landing page that says either safe sport, discipline complaints. It's a fairly easy to find button. And the reason you want it to be easy to find is you want people to be able to find it and use it. When timing is often important when making complaints about maltreatment. And some clubs and some sports organizations, including sports that I've personally been involved with, have what they call a 24-hour rule or a 48-hour rule to calm down after an incident. And that's fine. And I think the purpose of that is fine, especially when it's a disagreement about starting times or a training method, or, you know, something that happens and tempers are flared. You know, I think the idea behind that is a good one, but it's important to remember that if something truly serious has happened, a fight on the pool deck, an athlete comes to you as a coach about having been touched inappropriately, even an incident in terms of verbal bullying or racist comments being made at the pool. For situations like that, I would discourage use of a 24-hour cool down rule, and I would encourage those involved to report as soon as it happens. And the reason for that is it makes it much easier as you go through the process to identify everybody who is involved, make sure you're getting proper statements. You know, the longer you go between something happening and you reporting it or talking about it, the more detail you may forget. So as soon as possible is always best. That being said, there's a lot of research and evidence out there that just because somebody doesn't report it immediately doesn't mean it didn't happen. And oftentimes in cases of the most serious abuse, whether it's sexual abuse or ongoing emotional type abuse, it's quite common for people not to feel comfortable coming forward and reporting that to you right away. So you may end up having a situation at your club, and I saw a case like this not too long ago where a person alleged that they were abused by an athlete by a coach at a club more than 8 years before the report had been made, but the individual who had at the time been an athlete was now a volunteer coach at the club. And after years of going to therapy and working through their own issues that arose because of it, felt comfortable reporting what had happened. And that led to a number of other people coming forward and some fairly serious, both criminal and civil charges being brought against the coach involved, and that coach becoming ultimately banned from the sport in question, which was not a swimming coach. And the last thing is how. So people communicate in different ways. People roughly my age and older tend to like emails or face-to-face conversations. People quite a bit younger than me may prefer to send a text message or an email. But you need to find a way to, no matter how somebody first submits a complaint to you, you do need a standard way of documenting it. And what we recommend to our clients is to get something in writing. So if you're having a face-to-face meeting when someone's reporting it to you, you can ask the person, you know, would you be comfortable putting this in writing for me? If not, I would like to send you an email summarizing our discussion so that we have that in writing. And as the dispute resolution officer works their way through the process, people are making sure each step of the way that witnesses being interviewed, their witness evidence gets documented. You want to keep a pretty good record of everything that's said so that ultimately the person issuing a decision about whether or not there's been a policy breach and whether or not there's going to be a sanction, you want a good package of all that information for them to look at to make their decision. So coaches, volunteers, and board members obviously have a very important role in all of this. And again, as you're thinking about, beginning of the year training and things to speak about, obviously your athletes, parents, and athletes and parents are one group, but I think you should also spend some time internally with your coaches, volunteers, and board members to make sure that they're also aware of the codes of conduct that apply at your club, the discipline and complaints process that applies at the club. And, so make sure that they're aware of the general process. A lot of times what happens is the first person who hears of a concern may not be aware of everything that's supposed to happen. So I had a fairly serious one, maybe a year or so ago, where an athlete at a competition had been allegedly inappropriately touched by another athlete at the competition from a different club. And the first person that the athlete told was the athlete's mother, which is not uncommon. The mother didn't really know who to go to. So the mother then retold the whole story to the coach. The coach also did not really know what to do. And then the coach relayed the whole story to somebody managing the meet, and then also somebody back at the club. Eventually it made its way all the way to the provincial association after the story had been retold 7 or 8 different times before anything really got going. And that all took a number of days. So that's what you want to avoid, because it ends up being quite traumatic for the alleged victim. It also ends up spreading the word that a terrible thing has happened at the event, and gets the rumor mill going when 7, 8, 9 different people all are made aware of the situation before it gets streamlined properly, which can have both an impact, a harmful impact, both on the alleged victim, but also the alleged perpetrator and their respective clubs. So, the more people that are knowledgeable about the process and, who is the first person to go to, where is the right point of entry, the better. So spending some time with your coaches, volunteers, board members would be great. Making it clear that the clubs take these complaints seriously and that there is a process that needs to be followed. Making it clear about the notion of retaliation and how there can't be any. So in the codes of conduct that exist, it's actually a standalone violation to retaliate against somebody for pursuing their complaint. And retaliation most often takes the form of a coach or a volunteer banning an athlete or banning a parent from an event or from practicing or from socializing until a complaint is resolved, or and you can't do that. You have to make it safe for people to come forward and complain. And if as soon as somebody complains, you're kicking them out of the club, you're not sending that correct home. So I think educating coaches and volunteers and your board members on these policies is important, so that nobody wrongly takes a step that the organization as a whole wouldn't support and make the situation worse. Talking about who you do typically enlist to be a DRO, and that would be a great chat for you as a group to talk about. People who would make good DROs from within your network could be, a parent volunteer. If I was running a club personally, when I put out a call for volunteers, I would be looking for somebody who has a background in dispute resolution. So either a human resources professional would be really good, somebody with an HR background, somebody with a legal background. Some law schools actually have sports law training type programs where you might be able to find volunteer law students. But you want somebody, if you can't find any of those people, you want somebody who is going to be good at communicating, good at listening, and good at documenting things. Those are my 2 cents. And once I exit, you can maybe have a chat amongst yourselves about that. Skipping forward. So what do you do when you receive a complaint? So go to the next slide, please. This is just a little chart I made Clearly my graphic skills could use a bit of attention, but this is generally meant to be a guide of what you should do. So the first thing you need to do is document the complaint. Now, sometimes that may have been done for you. So if somebody sends into you an email dialogue or a letter outlining their concerns, check one, your job's done, it's been documented. As I said earlier, if someone just comes to you with an oral concern, one or two options. First, you can tell them to send it to you in writing, which is my preferred method. Alternatively, you can say, okay, I'm going to send you an email documenting our discussion and concern, and let me know if that would suffice for your complaint. So get it documented. Second step is read your policies and check your policies. So there's a new policy available from SWIM Ontario for clubs to adopt. It's found under club resources, and it's called the Complaint and Discipline and Appeal Procedure. So it's been drafted so that you can basically steal it and copy it and use it for your own clubs as your own policy. If you still haven't adopted that policy and are using your own, the first step needs to be to know that you have one and to read it. A lot of times, by the time SWIM Ontario hears of a complaint, or I get hired as a lawyer involved in the complaints process, sometimes a different process has been used because people forget there's a policy, or people don't remember the policy, because hopefully you're not getting too many complaints a year that you need to use it. But look at the policy, read it, and follow it. The challenge with having a policy and not following it is you may end up getting into trouble by one or all of the parties for not following the proper procedure, and it can cause bigger issues down the road if one party feels they weren't treated fairly because the policy was not followed. So if you have a policy, find it, read it, follow it. In terms of your DRO, as I've said, you really would typically want somebody who can really focus in on that role, become familiar with the policies, potentially take some other courses. So there's free courses available online from things like the Coaches Association of Canada. Our law firm has a few resources up on our website in terms of being able to just watch and get educated about discipline and complaints policies. So your club DRO should become a very sort of important person in your club, and have somebody that has the time to take the job seriously and get educated on the steps. Privacy is an important thing to remember in all of this. So it's far too frequent an occurrence from my experience for when a complaint is made that all of a sudden absolutely everybody involved in the club knows about it. So and it's usually not because anyone's trying to act maliciously. It's because people get nervous when complaints are made and don't necessarily know what to do. So one example is there was a complaint made at a relatively large organization about one coach on one team. And when the investigation into the matter was going to happen, the club decided to email that a certain coach was under investigation. And they sent that email to everybody in the association, even though at that point it was just a complaint, and it wasn't a very serious matter where the coach was being removed and people needed to be aware for safety reasons. So, there's times where, I'd say most of the time you want to keep the circle very small, and your DRO officer should know about the complaint. Steps should be made in the short term to make sure people are safe. So if you have a very serious complaint about, sexual misconduct involving a coach and an athlete, for example, you may want to move really quick on that and notify the provincial organization and police right away and probably remove that individual. But in most circumstances and most complaints, you're not going to be doing a broad press release to your entire organization about the fact that a complaint has been made by, Aaron as against Dean. and you're going to be looking into it, but please don't tell anybody about it, because both Aaron and Dean are going to be upset with you if such an email were to go out early in the process. And last but not least, ask for help. I know that Darren spends quite a bit of time, as do I, looking at concerns that clubs have brought to the attention of Swim Ontario. We've had questions where people just are having difficulty with the new policy, not knowing where to go, not knowing where to find resources. So, don't feel like you need to struggle through all of it alone. Darren is certainly a great resource, and feel free to use your larger network. So as I said before, parents of swimmers who are lawyers, human resource professionals in particular, those two groups of folks tend to be quite good at dispute resolution and complaint management. Your local law schools, if you're in the GTA, Osgoode Hall Law School, University of Toronto, Queens and Kingston, and so on, you can often find students who are willing to give you a bit of a hand on some of this if you don't have the budget to bring in your own lawyer. So I think those were all of the comments I was going to say today. Darren, did you have anything further to add from your perspective as the person on the front line who often gets the first question?
First of all, from a club perspective, no question to me is ever a bad question. If I'm already engaged in part of the process, I will be very forthright and say I can't talk to you about it because I'm engaged, but mostly my job is to help clubs with, policy and procedure questions and point them in the right direction. So, anything that seems like it's, let's say more than a 1-month suspension should automatically be directed to Swim Ontario anyway, at least for us to look at. If we're not going to take up the case, so to speak, then we will direct it back to the club. But, and definitely anything that involves, significant coach misconduct or maltreatment should be directed to Swim Ontario. But again, if you're not sure, I'm a simple email away. Just send me an email, even if you just want to say, hey, I need to chat. I have this thing. I'm happy to pick up the phone and chat.
There's a question there regarding a complaint form template.
Yeah, it's the you can use the JOT form, steal it from us. It's under in our sports safety section under report a complaint. You just click on report a complaint. It turns into a JOT form that's fillable, that goes confidentially to our dispute resolution officer. We can certainly provide our template of that JOT form to you.
The last question is a good one. What is the line between covering up and keeping the circle of informed small? And I'm happy to answer that question. Is it something that comes up from time to time? So when a complaint is first made, at that point, it's just an allegation. It's one person saying something has happened, and there needs to be a process to collect all relevant information and make a determination about, did this happen? Is it a violation of the code? And is there a sanction? So I wear many hats in the sports world. So with Swim Ontario, I don't get involved in doing investigations because I'm their legal counsel. But for many other organizations, my role is as the investigator. And the main reason why you need to keep the circle of people small when a complaint is first made is it makes it much easier to collect evidence and to figure out what happens. So let's say me and Dean and Darren got into a big fight on this Zoom call, and I swore at Dean about it, and then Dean made a complaint about it. If everybody on the call started telling everybody in the world about what had happened, the person that had to come and investigate would have to interview, basically everybody in the world. And maybe that's a bad example, but often what happens in these circumstances is it's one person complains about what another person had done, and there might be one other witness. If everybody goes around talking about the incident, sharing the experience, the whole club gets talking about it, for me to figure out what happens, I need to speak to the 3 people that were there first and foremost, but I then need to start thinking about, okay, well, did Dean change his story when he told the next 15 people about it? Does that impact on his credibility? So the fewer people who know about the underlying dispute, the easier it is to collect the evidence, and also the lower the reputational impact on all people involved. So when one person makes a complaint, sometimes that person gets looked at differently by members of the club. They might be seen as, somebody who's trying to abuse the complaint process. They might be seen as a complainer. They might, become known as someone who's not, nice to the coaches, and the word spreads around. The inverse of that is the person who the complaint is about. If everybody starts talking about it before it's determined, everyone or some people may all jump to conclusions about that person. So while there's a complaint and investigation process ongoing, again, you need to keep the circle of people who have the information small. However, once it's concluded, depending on what your policies say, there often can be the outcome communicated in terms of, there was a serious incident involving ex-coach, and they're now under a 5-month suspension. Swim Ontario has, I believe, I'm not sure if they do actually, but a lot of sports organizations have sections on their websites where people who are suspended are posted. So, while it's just being complained about and investigated, it's ideal to keep everything small. After there's been a decision released, typically you're able to communicate a little bit more about that. Does the third-party DRO need to inform staff or board of what's happening? Very good question. So Swim Ontario's DRO, as an example, runs pretty much completely independently from the organization in administering the complaints process. So his name is Brian Ward. He gets the complaint sent directly to him. Sometimes there needs to be communication as back and forth between him and Swim Ontario if there's going to be an interim suspension or something of that nature. But he basically runs the show independently. He's trained as a lawyer. He's extremely experienced in doing this. So his level of oversight by the organization is relatively low because he's a professional who's being paid to administer this. Your DRO, I think you're going to have to think about how much you trust the person, how skilled they are, whether or not you can afford to pay a professional to do it if it's a volunteer. I think if it's just a volunteer person who, is a parent, there may need to be more communication back to the club than what we have at the provincial level. But, I wouldn't be having that person tell the entire board or all of the staff what is going on. Perhaps you have one board member or a couple board members who need to be kept in the loop. Again, trying to avoid conflicts of interest that may exist. So, if the complaint is about a member of the board, obviously that member of the board should not be communicating with the DRO. But I think the level of oversight that you give to your DRO will largely depend on who that person is, whether or not they're being they're a paid professional lawyer or a volunteer. But yeah, that may change on a club to club basis. Darren, do you have anything else to add on that?
Well, at the Swim Ontario level, we never discuss specifics with the board. When I inform the board about complaints, it's always generalities about, we had a complaint and it generally involved this type of offense, and we leave it at that. And we talk about if there's an immediate risk to the organization, like we're about to get sued and we need to make an insurance claim or something like that. So it's very, very broad and never, ever, ever specifics.
Okay, well, that was great.
Thank you for
Aaron. I
having
think-
me, Dean. I went over my time, but I think we had
That's
some good
okay. Did we
questions
have
there.
a time for you? I've never, usually lawyers are pretty good at, no, just kidding. No, a lot of good information there, and I'm hopeful that, the other clubs that are not part of the call, tune into our recorded version of this, because as much as everybody thinks everything is great, you don't know how good it is until something takes place, and then you find out. So thanks a lot, Aaron, for this, very, very much.
Thanks for having me.
I think
Have a good night.
Yeah, and for those that have questions that pop up later on, that usually happens for me, please pass them along to Darren. That would be great. All right, Nicole's been feeding you some templates and stuff like that as we were going. That's great. Get a chance, Nicole. We'll go to the next slide. Yes, there we go. Here we go. Since the last time we spoke was back in January, and we have, then we were making a call for a host for the summer festival and for the OYJs, and we were fortunate. Oakville and Lakeshore has come together to team up to host the festivals in Etobicoke, and the OYJs will be hosted at Richmond Hill at the Markham Pan Am. So fantastic, because we really didn't want to see a portion of our swimmers not have a meet at that time. Maybe you recall, or maybe you were part of the Canadian swimming trials took place, and a lot of great swims and a lot of memorable swims, and lots of things there to be proud of. And just so you know, about 36 swimmers across their Paralympic and their Olympic streams, fielding the World Championships, the Junior Worlds, the Pan Ams. In some cases, Para Worlds, Pan Ams still need to be filled out a little bit. And I believe it's 5 coaches selected, but that may have changed as we go. But I know they're doing stuff like that. We had a successful winter spring provincial championships that took place, and thank you to Markham, eSwim, Whitby, and to EOMAC, who just hosted the Masters Championships, which exploded in participation. But a lot of great swims, some world records and national records took place there. So pretty exciting. We have camps and tours that have been in place. Some have gone internationally, and some are doing something more domestic, whether it's across the country or whether it's in our own backyard. Things are happening. Good cohort of swimmers and coaches are being given an opportunity. And as mentioned before, we had our club mentorship program. We launched it. 3 mentor clubs, Oakville, Barrie, and Whitby. And we had 18 clubs. So each of the mentor clubs had 6 clubs. We had some guidelines, and a lot of the guidelines came in and around good practices from an organizational level in and around Darren's portfolio, to make sure that we're talking the same language when it comes down to having solid policies, procedures, so on and so forth. But it was good, really good, interesting thing. Andy and Darren and I had the front row seat to see all sessions given, and each session gave some really good information, whether it was on the coaching side of it or on the organization leadership side of it. And hats off to one of the clubs who signed up for it and participated in it, and we're going to come back in September and do something hopefully in person with them. And thanks to Oakville, David and David, Coach David and the President David, and to Whitby with Debbie, President Debbie, and Coach Olivier, and Barrie with President Ryan and Coach Andy. So really good steps in towards a process, and we like to see this expand out. So we'll be looking for more mentor clubs, and hopefully we'll feed them with a lot more of the clubs out there. We have about 140 clubs, so I think some dialogue is needed. Coaching programs such as the Next Gen program has taken a good hold this past year, bringing in 11-time Olympic coach Tom Johnson and creating some other opportunities along the way. The Coach Accelerator program, and I listed it, level 3 took place first and was successful, I believe, with 9 or 10 candidates. maybe it's 11, can't remember. And then level 2 is on its way, which is really good. And then we also gave support subsidy for the level 1s for each club to take full advantage. So lots of good things coming from the coach development pieces. Along with that one, and I don't have it on this slide here, but around when we talk about investing in certain areas and officials, that I was informed that we had recently, since November, had 8 level 5 official graduates and 8 level 4. There's probably 1 or 2 of you on the call that are part of that, and there's probably a couple of you on the call that just got the nod, but it hasn't been officially posted. But you can go to our website and look under the officials and look under the page there, and you can see who's there, plus all the level 3. So we are coming back on the side of developing our officials, and as I'm learning each day, that it's a great amount of commitment of the volunteers who are wanting to raise their level of officiating, a huge commitment, and we're really appreciative of that. We've hired 2 summer students in place, Khalees Moldoa and Suki, I can't think of her last name, but anyways, you'll see them lots this summer. And we also will be hiring a part-time position to offload some of the additional loads that have taken on for some of our staff, and hopefully to improve a little bit of some of the areas that we want to extend and be better at. The RTR cyber breach recovery subsidy, we launched this back in March, and we know that time flies, and we know that time crunch, and we did have a May 15th deadline. We felt that the RTRs opened up in February at some point in time, and I know things are busy and all. I know that the only catchment is the swimmers, because they won't be able to compete if they're not registered properly and updated. Coaches might get caught at the provincial level and things like that. So we know people slide through the cracks, but it leaves us vulnerable. So we want to help the clubs, realizing how much extra work it would be. And, it was to the tune of about potentially 160,000. So anyway, 60 clubs have achieved the criteria. Thanks, Nicole. She's picking up the pieces this week while Heather is on vacation. And I'll just take a commercial break right now, just so that between government funding, our own funding, which is through the swim meets, through how we generate our revenue, that over the last 3 years we gave back over $1 million to the clubs, and pretty substantial. And so maybe in 3 years' time that might have been a mistake, but I do believe investing in our people, investing in our clubs. And so we've stuck to that. And so that was part of trying to help move forward. As Andy talked about, the 23-24 budget, we have no increase to registration fees. We're going to hold off on that just so that people can, move forward. This gives a bit of a break to swimmers. You will see small incremental fee increases through the Swimming Canada fees. But when it comes down to seeing the registration fees moving forward, there won't be any fee raises. However, there is an additional dollar amount attached to your affiliation fees. And that is there to invest in our education, one of our educational pieces, which is our conference. And so basically there is an additional dollar charge to your affiliation fees. It's one basically ticket to the conference. So no excuse that clubs can't be involved, and I'm sure that those from afar can work with their regions and maybe get some support if it means if it's possible and if it means a lot to you. So that is on that. And then the last thing is our board and operational committees. I think I've said it before. We're well over 70 people that participate on the board committees and on the Chrissy's updating you with our student summer students. So anyways, lots of things happening. and with obviously targeted work plans. So both board committees and our operational committees are quite busy as we move forward on things. Next slide. Yeah, so again, I'm saying we're investing in, as Andy's said, these areas and more, including the EDI piece, but there are more. And we're strong on that. And we are going to be part of the, I'll call it club, coach, swimmer, regional development. We will be investing in grassroots. We feel it's a very important piece. A great international coach has always said, world-class swimming starts with world-class grassroots. So we're going to hold to that and build on that. So more is coming on that in the next few months. And then something from one of my mentors was invest in people, improve the service product, and succeed. Next slide. There we go. Is Leela on? Is Leela? Maybe before I go to this, go back. Is there any questions for me? Is there any questions? I blew by that quite fast, but I think you get the point. Okay, perfect. Awesome, outstanding. Thank you very much, everybody. I don't know if Leela's on, so I will take this up. And this is the work done by the EDI committee. And we've been, worked towards education and awareness from a couple of years ago on our, I think our first virtual conference that we did. We brought it to the forefront and trying to understand more at all the different angles of things. So this was a few slides from our report to the board last April, an in-person board meeting, and we did some reports. So this is a picture of the high performance. So we cover high performance, and then the next slide, and then it's age group swimming, and this is maybe more of the picture of what swimming looks like here in Ontario. Across the way, different shapes, different sizes, different faces, and all that kind of stuff, and everything else. So it's, in my mind, it's very inclusive. And as you may have seen and read and so on and so forth, we've done a tremendous amount of stories over the last 3 years, covering athletes, covering clubs, covering coaches, officials. We did a piece on volunteerism prior to Christmas, and then we carried that one on to getting to know your board, the board of directors for Swim Ontario. And now we're leading into the next theme, and the next theme is celebrating diversity in Ontario swimming. And we do have lots to celebrate, recognize, and along the way, we'll become more aware and educate. So next slide. Yeah, so the committee mandate was to guide and assist Swim Ontario in attaining current policy objectives, encouraging equity, inclusion, universal participation with its clubs, associated committees, and registrants. Again, you see from an organizational excellence piece, we continue to update our policies to make sure to test it within line with our strategic plan. Supporting universal participation with its programs and activities, pledging fair and equitable opportunities within the Swim Ontario and the working environment free of discrimination. And I guess the bold point here is to make recommendations to establish metrics for Swim Ontario on how to enhance and strengthen its commitment to equity and inclusion in Ontario swimming. So the committee has been working at it. We have reached out to experts in the field, experts in and around policy generation and procedure, bit on procedures, to give good advice, to do a bit of a test. Almost a litmus test on what we're doing, test out our strategic plan. Does it seem, as we refresh it, as it is a long-term plan, and also reach out to an external group who have done extensive research and delivery to maybe to the club level in a practical manner. So those things are going hand in hand. Next slide. So this is what we incorporate or working on incorporating in the strategic plan. Under the club support and engagement, we have a directional goal: support local clubs to help understand and create an inclusive environment to recognize the value of diversity and equity 2022 and onwards. So that will be inserted into our strategic plan. And then around the organizational excellence, education and governance, directional goal: develop policy and review current operational processes for continuous efforts to ensure diverse perspectives and lived experience in the workplace. in 2023 and onward. So those are ideas that we're going through and we're working at. And this is, again, something that we can share within your own club situation. And some of you, as we've seen and learned, are getting into a very good place on this. Next slide. There we go. All right. Any questions on our EDI? So that will be part of our theme, as Christy will come to it in the, we've had part of that as part of our themes over the last couple of years in our conferences, and trying to, not only build fast swimmers but also swimmers who are happy and feel safe, and right through to parents and volunteers, officials. Last thing we need is see a coach coming in hot on an official during a swim meet. There's no need of that. And hopefully we won't have to get to a zero tolerance on that. But it's funny how the behaviors are it's interesting, the behaviors taking place at all levels, all ages, and so on and so forth. So I think hopefully the earlier session by Aaron has helped us at least have a think on that. So Darda's not here. And so I will briefly go through the para swimming initiatives. We had a great presentation at the January meeting by Darda. Para swimming information session is Wednesday, May 24th at 7 p.m. over Zoom. Topic is pathway, competitions, and connection. I believe we'll have that posted. The target is level 1 classified athletes, their families, and coaches. So it might be a bit directed, but if anybody is interested, please get a hold of Darda. Festivals, just making it clear, open to all para swimming swimmers, including level 1 classified regardless of age. Excellent opportunity for level 1 swimmers to meet and race against other para swimmers earlier in the development. And then a little later on after the Ontario Swimming Championships, she's going to do a debrief camp with para swimmers who are involved. And just a side note there, another commercial break. We have our Ontario Junior International meet coming up in December, and we are working towards having it integrated with para swimming. So we're making some, I would say, some progressive moves in that area. It's recognized by the province, so we're excited about that, and we're just trying to figure out how to fit the pieces in to make it the great meet it's always been, or keep it being the great meet. So in fall of 23, this is Darda's got planned, probably a lot of other things that Pools of Schools will continue. That was a wonderful program she's come up with. Becoming a Para Ready initiative 2.0, September to July. I believe we're going to have a para piece, an expert coming in from outside of Ontario to speak about being Para Ready and pieces like that. Level 2 classification in November. Para Provincial Camp November 18th. The Ken Demchuk International Invitation will be out in Vancouver, so it'll be a tour team activity. As we said, the OJI Para Integration into the meet, and then the OJI Fundamental Camp that includes the para swimmers at that level. And then she's working with the regions to develop their camp system. So lots and lots of stuff going on in and around the para piece. So any questions on para? If you do, I would contact Darda. And so hopefully that's good. Okay, where are we at? Next slide. I think I'm off the hook. Yes, I'm going to bring in my good friend, colleague, and smart guy, Stu McLean. Stu, want to give us an overview on the performance programming and the calendar for, I believe it's next year?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Dean. Apologies for not turning my camera on. My internet is a little shaky where I am. So I'm holding on for dear life at the moment. Dean referenced, I'll just give you a quick update on the 23-24 performance programming plan. These details are part of what is driving our final decisions as we put the plan in the camp and tour team plan into place, and hopefully we'll be able to announce full details of that in the coming weeks. A couple of the things that are happening this year really are allowing us to make our transition into our next quadrennial for the 24-25 season, and one of those elements is the the classification or the umbrellas which we will place our programming and funding support under. And those three areas are international podium development, domestic to podium development, and then regional performance development. We feel that these are the three areas where we have historically focused, that we need to continue to focus, but we need to look at to develop over the next 6 years as we, 5 years as we move towards Los Angeles in 2028. Some key priorities within that programming piece, some individual stroke camps. So delivering individual camps focused on world-class stroke and skill development, as well as developing understanding world-class racing and racing best practices. Coming out of the pandemic, as we reintroduced our camp protocols and programming, we focused on sort of more big universal themes, just trying to get everybody sort of back up to speed and driving forward in some areas that the NSO, Swimming Canada, had identified as some key weaknesses, and some areas that we were seeing with the swimming groups at the first, as the first meet results were coming in. With this next block, we'll move to sort of pinpoint some key areas of concern within each stroke and to identify those at our camps. Distance swimming will remain a priority. We have been running a 400-meter and up training initiative this year, which involved 2 training camps, mini camps. One was 2.5 days, one was 2 days. We'll look to expand that group. In size, and look at 3 training sessions throughout the course of the season. Racing tours, offering racing opportunities for both domestic and international development opportunities. So we are looking at tours within Canada, but we are also now at a point where we feel we can look to some international opportunities that will help our that next generation of athlete pushing towards the podium in 2028. Regional programming. So coordinating with regional leadership to provide programming alignment, as well as develop grassroots initiatives that engage 12 and under swimmers. So one of those key areas coming out of the pandemic was that sort of development interruption with our younger swimmers. And so we're looking at ways that the regions can play a large part in offering program opportunities to help engage those younger swimmers. We still will be running the OJI Fundamentals Camp, which will kind of be the benchmark that will filter down into the regional programming opportunities. And then, as Dean mentioned, and with Darda's slides, really continue to focus on an integration of an Olympic stream and Paralympic stream program deliverables at the provincial and regional level. So making sure that if we are running a programming opportunity, that it is open to both Olympic stream swimmers and Paralympic stream swimmers. The regional camps that were run this year, those camps, for the majority of them, did have a Olympic stream and Paralympic stream component, and we're looking to enhance that as we move forward. Next slide, please. Can I do that? I guess I don't know if I can do that. Just some key dates for you. So camps and tours. So we'll look to start our programming in October of 2023. This will allow for full registration of the athletes to be completed. We'll look at the individual stroke camps and para camps. They will run sort of in a combined effort on the same day in the same pool. So we're looking at October 2023, January to February of 2024, and then April 2024. Our racing tours, we're looking at November and December of 2023. and possible date in January, and then May or June in 2024. Regional camps will work with the regional leadership teams to determine when those camps will be. It's our hope that we will see something in the fall, something in and around the October timeframe, or maybe even into November, depending on the region. And then again, another camp in the April or May timeframe. Okay. From a provincial competition standpoint, provincial competition dates, I won't run through each meet here. You can see the dates and the hosts. I will say that each event has a corresponding event page on the website. If you go to the bottom of the main page, you'll see those events and dates. If you click on that button, it'll take you to the event page, and that page gets populated as the information becomes available. One piece I was asked to highlight, and that was from my colleague Lindsay Taylor. Dean had mentioned the accelerator program, the 201 accelerator. We are still taking applications for that program. We are running 2 cohorts of 12 coaches who will be trained at the 201 level by the end of the session. And that is covered by Swim Ontario. So if there is interest from any of the clubs or a coach on your staff and they have questions, they can feel free to contact Lindsay Taylor, lindsay@swimontario.com, and she'll help sort of coordinate that registration. And I think I saw 1 or 2 questions come up, Dean. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's one question it came from one of the clubs regarding investing, or the investment with the officials and hearing impaired conditions, situations, and things like that. Yes, the simple question is, or the simple answer is yes. And you're well aware, and you've been in touch with the chair, one of the chairs of the Swim Ontario Officials Committee. You've had conversations with Darren, and Darren's had conversations with various other people, even Swimming Canada. So like whenever something does come to the surface, we take things very seriously and we do work on things. So thanks for that comment. And I think Stu, the other one was trying, how do you get into the individual stroke camps? I believe that may have been the question.
Yeah, so the domestic podium development piece, or the individual stroke camps. So those will be identified based on performances from January 1st of this calendar year, 2023, until the August 31st of this year. Long course meter performances only, as it stands now, be based off of individually ranked performances for the targeted age groups, which are 16 and under males and 15 under female. So more details will come out. That's sort of the sort of rudimentary snapshot of what the selection will be, but there'll be a more detailed selection criteria available on the website around these initiatives, and they can be found. I'll put it in the chat, the link to these initiatives. But basically under the athletes section, you'll see a piece on funding, tour teams, camps. If you click any one of those icons, it'll take you to the detailed information that we have, and that will be populated over the next bit. Is the process outreach directly to clubs/swimmers who are at that rank, who are in that ranking? I'm not sure I understand the question, but I think we do in the process of developing the camps and notifying the swimmers. We work directly with the coaches. We do notify the swimmers' families as needed in order to make sure that they have access to the opportunity, and we make sure that we follow up with those swimmers and with those coaches with the information that was offered on the day, and provided to the swimmers during the sessions.
Okay.
Do they do shorter race focus or only 200 and above for the stroke camps? This past year, we focused on 200 for the just 200 meter stroke distances. We'll be changing that up a little bit this year and having consideration for the short distances, not necessarily stroke 50s, but certainly the hundreds.
Great, Stu. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Dean.
again, you can always find Stu and ask questions, but a lot of it goes through your coaches. So hopefully they're well aware of what's going on. All right, on to our last slide, and I'll turn it over to Christy. Our awards conference and Hall of Fame and everything's coming up, not far away. It comes fast, and we keep investing in that. So Christy, hand it over to you.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Just before I go into giving an overview about the conference, just with the question about supports for hearing impaired. So I had a discussion with the team, and I will be applying for a grant in collaboration with Swimming Canada to be able to offer officials clinics and training with closed caption and subtitling, as well as I've had some discussion with DARDA because there are two small grants that have come online through the Canadian Paralympic Committee, specifically to support coaches and athletes and officials and volunteers to support hearing impaired. So I'm just working through that. So I noticed that there were some questions in the chat about that. So more to come on that. Just with regards to the conference, we're very pleased, excited to be offering everyone a conference focused on the theme Stronger Together at the Toronto Airport Marriott, September 22nd to the 24th. There's a general announcement that is online, but you are able to actually now book your rooms and plan ahead. We are quite excited to confirm that we have signed the first keynote. Thank you, Dean, for all the back and forth through leading up to trials, but also at trials and then after with Brent Arkey, who is the head coach of the Sarasota Sharks, also Summer McIntosh's coach, but he has a pretty incredible story to tell. And he will be presenting not only to the coaches for a couple of sessions, but also doing a keynote on the Saturday at the conference to everyone. And he will be talking about just telling his story about his journey, really about bringing the community together and the journey of the Sarasota Sharks and the involvement of the community and all of the families in Sarasota, and how that has led to a very strong club presence and supports for everyone along the performance pathway for the coaches, the athletes and the officials and the families and the volunteers. So we're really looking forward to that. We are just to touch on a few of the other panels that we are working on or sessions that we are working on. We're hoping to have, as Dean was saying, a diversity and inclusion and equity session, a number of sessions focused in on that on both Friday and Saturday. Also a grassroots coaching panel. As Dean was saying, DARDA, I'm working with DARDA to include an actual training session around becoming para-ready, and that will be followed up with a panel discussion that will include coaches, clubs, and athletes, which is also a focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion. We've initiated club mentor sessions, and we're hoping that have already been rolling out, and we're hoping to invite them to a session or a panel discussion. As Aaron was mentioning, currently working with Darren and Aaron and others on a number of important sessions around the club toolbox for all of you, for all of the clubs. And I know that also on Saturday, there will be a number of official sessions, very exciting, very important sessions that are going to be offered on Saturday of the conference. And we are working to finalize a number of presenters and performance leaders that are going to bring again a theme around stronger together, but touching on the importance of and respect and acknowledgement of Indigenous heritage and history. And then, of course, on the Saturday evening, it's really all about celebrating all of the incredible things that are happening in the Ontario swimming community through our awards banquet and the Hall of Fame. And very excited also to have the in-person AGM on Sunday, and we're hoping to have some sort of a presentation or a speaker that will kick off the AGM on Sunday. We haven't done that. So I hope that you will all book your accommodation. Each club has their first ticket provided. The fee for 2 days of the conference, as is shown on the screen, is $350. 1 day is $200. It is going to be a wonderful weekend. With regards to the aquatics, the Ontario Aquatic Hall of Fame, the inductees, I really think they do symbolize or reflect the stronger together theme, even though that wasn't necessarily coordinated. But if you think of everything that Paul Corkum and Dan Taylor, as far as being builders, did for the swimming community, and joining us all together to be stronger together, it's quite fitting that they are being inducted this year. And Raymond Brown, as an athlete, I'm really looking forward to that as well. So not sure if there's any questions for me, but stay tuned. We hope to have a more fulsome agenda with confirmation and more details on the schedule posted in the coming weeks.
Great, Christy. Is there any questions? Anything that's, I know the hour's it's starting to get dark and everything like that. Hopefully you brought your pets in from outside, your kids from outside. Yeah, anyways, lots of information tonight, and thanks for everybody for hanging in there.
Hey,
Again,
I got a question, Dean. Can I ask?
yes,
Hey, this is Mike. Thanks, Chrissy. That was a lot of great information. Quick thing. I've never been to one of these conferences. Just want to understand when you talk about official sessions, is there opportunities at this conference to actually get training and certification courses done at this session, at this conference? Yeah, that's my first question.
okay, I don't know, Nicole, do you feel like?
Nicole-
Are you there,
Nicole could, yes, for sure, best answer that.
No certification clinics. Nicole has a rule. She doesn't talk in public after 8:30 at night. She's been
So
too
when we're
busy. No,
talking about officials meetings, then what does that kind of mean?
it's all the updates, all the various things. It's what officials, you know. Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead, Nicole.
I couldn't find my microphone. I'm having issues today. So it will be mostly on what's upcoming for the season in terms of the training modules that are out there for you, the certification pathway and how that works. It will also be on the topics about hearing impaired. We will certainly re-emphasize those aspects to our officials on top of bulletins that are sending out their new rules that have come out from both World Aquatics and Swimming Canada. Those will be highlighted. And there will also be some workshops as to how to do officials development within your club and engage your officials to want to be there and such. So that's what will be taking place during the conference.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. Okay, no, thanks very much, Nicole. Thanks, Christy.
Okay. By all means, if you have questions that pop into your head, please forward them along. You can always do it at info@swimontario.com, and they always get it. They find somewhere. They find us. So anyways, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. I think we had a couple board members on tonight too. We had Tim Barker and Janet Morrison and maybe a couple others. But anyways, have a good evening, and we'll see you on the deck soon. Thank you.